Working the night shift as a security guard means spending long, lonely hours watching over empty spaces. Most nights, it's dead quiet. The silence is your only companion. But every so often, the silence is broken by something that shouldn't be there. Something that leaves you questioning everything. Tonight, we're diving into 3 true horror stories from security guards that still can't be explained. Our first story comes from a guard named Mark, who was assigned to an old, vacant office building in the heart of downtown. The building was scheduled for demolition, completely stripped out and emptied. His job was simple: patrol the perimeter and make sure no one got inside. One rainy Tuesday night, Mark was doing his rounds. The only light came from his flashlight beam, cutting through the darkness and the occasional flash of lightning. He'd just finished checking the main entrance, confirming the heavy chains and padlocks were secure. Everything was as it should be. He headed back to his small security booth at the edge of the property to get out of the rain. As he settled in, he glanced up at the dark, looming structure. That's when he saw it. A single light on in a window on the 5th floor. His heart started pounding. No one should be in there. The power to the entire building had been cut weeks ago. He grabbed his radio and called his supervisor, his voice a little shaky. The supervisor told him it was probably just a reflection from the lightning. Mark tried to believe him. He stared at the window, waiting for the next flash of lightning to prove it. But the lights stayed on, a steady, faint glow in the blackness of the building. It wasn't flickering. It wasn't a reflection. Against his better judgment, he decided he had to go inside and check. Protocol was clear. Never enter an unsecured building alone. But the thought of someone being inside, hurt or trespassing, pushed him to break the rules. He unlocked the gate and made his way to a side service door he had a key for. The air inside was cold and damp, thick with the smell of dust and decay. The only sound was the rain drumming against the roof and the echo of his own footsteps. He started the slow climb up the emergency stairwell, his flashlight beam dancing across the concrete walls. Floor by floor, he cleared each level. Nothing, just empty rooms and debris left by the demolition crews. When he finally reached the 5th floor, the air felt different, colder. He pushed open the heavy fire door to the main office space. The steady glow he saw from outside was gone. The entire floor was pitch black. He swept his flashlight across the vast, open room. Empty desks, overturned chairs, and piles of drywall were scattered everywhere. He walked toward the window where he'd seen the light. There was nothing there that could have produced it. No lamps, no electronics, nothing. He stood there for a moment, confused. Maybe his supervisor was right. Maybe his mind was playing tricks on him. As he turned to leave, he heard a sound. A soft, dragging noise coming from the far end of the floor. He froze, aiming his flashlight in the direction of the sound. It was coming from behind a row of old filing cabinets. He slowly approached, his hand resting on his sidearm. The dragging sound stopped. He peeked around the edge of the cabinet and saw nothing. Just an empty corner. He let out a shaky breath, feeling a bit foolish. He was about to turn back when his flashlight beam caught something on the floor. Scratched into the thick layer of dust were words. They looked fresh. He leaned in closer to read them. "Get out." He scrambled backward, his heart hammering against his ribs. He didn't wait for a second invitation. He ran. He didn't stop running until he was back in the safety of his security booth, locking the door behind him. He never saw the light again. and he put in his transfer request the very next day. The second story takes us to a remote construction site for a new luxury housing development. Our narrator, a guard named David, was tasked with watching over the half-finished skeletons of houses and expensive equipment. The site was miles from the nearest town, surrounded by dense woods. David's routine was to do a patrol every 2 hours in his pickup truck, driving the muddy tracks that snaked through the property. It was a clear, moonless night, and the only light came from the powerful floodlights set up around the perimeter. Around 2 a.m., during his third patrol, David noticed something odd. The motion-activated floodlight near the back of the property, bordering the woods, was on. But there was nothing there. No deer, no trespassers, just empty ground. He figured it was a faulty sensor and made a note to report it in the morning. He continued his patrol, but as he circled back around 20 minutes later, he saw that another light had come on, and then another. It was like they were being triggered in a sequence, leading from the woods deeper into the construction site. One by one, the lights flickered on, illuminating a path where nothing was moving. David stopped his truck, the engine humming in the otherwise silent night. He felt a cold dread wash over him. He watched as the final light in the sequence, right next to the largest unfinished house, switched on. And then everything went still. The lights stayed on, bathing the area in an eerie, sterile glow. But there was no movement. He radioed it in, but his voice was met with static. The radio was dead. He tried his cell phone. No signal. He was completely cut off. That's when he heard it. A high-pitched, metallic, screeching sound. It was coming from inside the house where the last light had turned on. It sounded like metal grinding on metal. David grabbed his heavy-duty maglite and cautiously got out of his truck. He had to investigate. As he approached the house, the screeching stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying. He stepped through the open framing of the front door into the main room. The inside was a maze of wooden beams and plastic sheeting. He called out, "Security! Is anyone in here?" His voice echoed through the cavernous space. No reply. He swept his light across the room. Piles of lumber, tools, and wires. Nothing out of the ordinary. He moved deeper into the house, toward the back where he thought the sound came from. He entered what would be the kitchen, and there, in the middle of the floor, was a heavy steel support beam. It wasn't there before. The construction plans showed it was supposed to be installed on the second floor. Scratched all over the beam were strange, intricate symbols he didn't recognize, and lying next to it was a crowbar, its tip bent and warped. It looked like someone had been trying to pry the beam, or maybe drag it. But a single person could never move something that heavy. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang from the floor above him. It sounded like something heavy had been dropped. David's training told him to stay put and wait for backup, but he was alone. No one was coming. He found the makeshift stairs and slowly climbed to the second floor. The air grew heavy and cold. He raised his flashlight, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Every single one of the steel support beams that had been stacked and ready for installation was gone. The entire pile, weighing several tons, had vanished. He was standing in the exact spot they should have been. He looked back down the stairs, and that's when he saw it. A tall, impossibly thin shadow, detaching itself from the wall and slipping silently out the front door frame. He didn't see a face, just a dark, elongated silhouette that moved in a way that wasn't human. David didn't hesitate. He fled the house, jumped in his truck, and drove. He didn't stop until he reached the town limits, where his phone finally got a signal. He quit that same night. Our final story is perhaps the most chilling. It comes from an experienced guard named Frank, who worked at a high-tech medical research facility. The building was state-of-the-art, with motion sensors, pressure plates, and hundreds of cameras covering every inch of the property. Frank's station was in the central security hub, a room filled with monitors displaying feeds from all over the building. For years, his nights were uneventful. He'd watch the empty hallways and sterile labs, the silence broken only by the hum of the servers. One night, an alarm blared to life. Motion detected in Sector 4, the cryogenics lab. Frank's eyes darted to the corresponding monitor. The lab was a large, circular room lined with dozens of large, stainless steel cryogenic pods. The camera showed nothing. The room was empty. Frank reset the alarm, assuming it was a glitch. A few minutes later, the alarm went off again. Same location. Motion in the cryolab. Again, he looked at the screen. Empty. But this time, he noticed something. The overhead camera gave a full view of the room. In the center of the floor was the company's logo, a large, stylized letter C. He could have sworn that one of the cryogenic pods was now casting a slightly longer shadow across the logo than it had been a few minutes ago. He dismissed it as a trick of the light. He zoomed the camera in on the pod in question, Pod 73. It was sealed, just like all the others. The digital display on its side read stable. He settled back in his chair, his eyes glued to the screen. For an hour, nothing happened. Frank started to relax. Then, the alarm screamed for a third time. Motion detected. Sector 4, cryolab. His gaze snapped to the monitor, and his heart stopped. The heavy, sealed door of Pod 73 was now slightly ajar. It was impossible. Those pods required a two-person keycard authorization and a complex digital code sequence to open. They couldn't just swing open on their own. He stared, his mind racing. Who was in there? How did they open it? He switched to the camera inside the pod, a feature used for monitoring the contents. The feed was black. The internal camera was dead. He frantically started reviewing the security footage from the last hour. He fast-forwarded through the quiet moments until he got to the second alarm. He played it back in slow motion. He watched the empty room, and then he saw it. Pour a single frame, a flicker of movement. He paused the video, advancing it frame by frame. The shadow of Pod 73 didn't just get longer. It detached from the pod. A dark, humanoid shape rose from the pod's shadow on the floor. It was indistinct, like a heat haze, and it stood there for a fraction of a second before melting back into the shadow. Frank felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He went back to the live feed. The door to Pod 73 was now wider open. He could see into the dark interior. A thin, pale hand was gripping the edge of the door from the inside. He grabbed the phone to call the police, his hands trembling. As he was dialing, a new alert flashed on his screen. Pressure plate activated. Hallway for B right outside the cryolab. Someone or something was out. He switched to the camera in the hallway for B. The long, white corridor was empty, but the pressure plate sensor was still lit up. Something with a weight was standing right on it, but the camera couldn't see it. Then, one by one, the sensors down the hallway began to light up in succession. Something invisible was walking toward him. Frank dropped the phone. He was on the ground floor. The thing was on the fourth, but it was moving fast. He watched on the monitors as it moved through the building, a wave of triggered sensors marking its unseen path. It was heading for the stairwell. It was coming for him. He scrambled out of the security hub and ran for the main exit. He didn't look back. He burst out into the night air and didn't stop running. He never returned to the facility. The official report listed the event as a massive system-wide electrical malfunction, but Frank knows what he saw, and he knows what was hunting him in the empty halls of that building. Some things have no explanation. For these guards, a quiet night on the job turned into a nightmare they would never forget. Thanks for watching, and if you have a story of your own, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more unexplained stories. Stay safe out there.